Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She looked me dead in the eye when she said it. Calm, almost proud. With him, I finally felt something. She waited, expecting the explosion. The shattered glass, the shouting, the begging. She wanted me broken. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, steady, and let the words hang in the air. Then I told her what she never thought she'd hear. Great. Have fun. For a moment, the room went silent. Not because of what she said, but because of what I didn't do. I didn't plead. I didn't rage. I didn't even blink. She tilted her head, confused, like a magician whose trick had failed in front of the audience. And then came the part that rattled her most. She wasn't sure why I wasn't upset. She thought the confession would give her control. She thought it would keep me chasing, desperate to prove I still mattered. But her words didn't cut me the way she imagined. They carved clarity instead. I had been living with suspicions for months. Her late nights, the cold glances, the way her smile had shifted from mine to the glow of her phone. That night was confirmation. And with confirmation comes freedom. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. My hand was steady. She followed me, arms crossed, trying to mask her uncertainty with indifference. She asked if I really didn't care. I looked at her once, then past her, and drank in silence. That silence did more damage than any words could. It left her stranded, exposed. She had been bracing for fire, and instead she got ice. As I rinsed the glass and set it down, I thought back to all the little signals I'd ignored. The nights she claimed she was working late, but came home smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. The way she stopped asking about my day. The constant checking of her phone, screen tilted away. Each one a crack I had painted over with denial. Not anymore. That night, I didn't sleep on the edge of the bed, waiting for her to reach for me. I didn't roll over and pretend nothing happened. I lay in the center, calm, as if the house had already learned to breathe without her. She wanted to make me bleed. What she got instead was something far worse. She got to watch me let go without a fight. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed to herself in the kitchen, her voice just a little too loud, like a performance staged for me. She waited for me to ask where she'd been, who he was, what she meant by the words she threw at me last night. I didn't. I ate my breakfast in silence, read the news on my phone, and left for work without a single question. She wasn't used to that. She had lived off my attention, my reactions. Even the arguments were proof that she mattered. But when I took that away, she was left chasing something she couldn't reach. By the second day, she tried a different tactic. She came home late again, perfume heavier than usual, dropping her purse loudly on the counter like an announcement. She said she'd been out with friends, waiting for me to react, to call her out, to demand answers. I nodded, said goodnight, and went to bed. That silence was worse for her than any fight. I could see it in the way she lingered in the hallway, expecting me to follow, to challenge, to plead. Instead, she found nothing but the sound of the bedroom door closing. At dinner on the third night, she tried another approach. She mentioned a new restaurant a coworker had taken her to, her tone light, but edged, waiting for me to snap. I cut my steak, chewed slowly, and said it sounded nice. Then I asked if she could pass the salt. She froze for a second, then laughed nervously, but the crack in her voice betrayed her. It was starting to dawn on her that I wasn't playing, that I wasn't waiting for explanations. I was moving in silence, cutting her off not with anger, but with absence. Later that week, she cornered me in the living room. Her voice was sharper now, accusing. She asked if I didn't care anymore, if I was seeing someone else. I looked up from my book, met her eyes for a single second, and then returned to the page. No answer. No fuel for her fire. That night, she slept restless, tossing, sighing loudly, shifting under the covers like every movement might wake me. I didn't move. My breathing stayed steady, calm, deliberate. Because the truth was simple. She had finally felt something with someone else. And now, for the first time, she was feeling nothing with me. Nothing at all. And that nothing was cutting deeper than any jealousy ever could. It didn't take long for her to widen the stage. When silence at home didn't break me, she reached for the people around us. The first call came from her sister. She said my wife was worried, that she thought I was shutting her out, acting strange. I listened quietly, thanked her for checking in, and told her everything was fine. No details, no accusations, just calm dismissal. Her tone faltered. She had expected defense, maybe anger. She got nothing. A few days later, one of our friends pulled me aside at work. He said she had told him I'd become cold, that I no longer cared. He looked at me like he was waiting for the rest of the story, some angry justification. Instead, I smiled, shrugged, and said things had changed. That was all. The silence made him uneasy. And the more uneasy he felt, the more he doubted her side of things. Word spread fast, but not the way she planned. She wanted to paint herself as the victim, the wife abandoned by an unfeeling husband. But the version of me people saw didn't match her story. They saw calm, measured, focused. They didn't see bitterness, or rage, or a man unraveling. They saw someone who had simply stepped away. And in that contrast, her narrative started to collapse. One evening, her mother called. She asked why I wasn't fighting for the marriage, why I wasn't chasing her daughter. I said one sentence. I told her that her daughter had already confessed she felt something with another man, and that I wished her well. The line went silent. Then came a shaky breath, and the conversation ended quickly after that. Meanwhile, I continued my routine. Work, gym, home. No arguments, no attempts to explain myself. The less I said, the more weight it carried. People began to notice the cracks in her. The forced laughter, the defensive tone, the way her stories shifted when pressed. The harder she tried to convince others I was the problem, the clearer it became she was running from the truth. She didn't expect silence to be a weapon. She thought it was weakness, retreat. But it was sharper than any words I could throw at her. It turned her allies into skeptics, her excuses into confessions. And now, for the first time, she was realizing she wasn't just losing me. She was losing the image she had built to hide behind. I wasn't looking for proof. By then, I didn't need it. Her words had already confirmed what I suspected. But one night, when I grabbed my jacket from the hall closet, her old purse slipped from the shelf and spilled across the floor. Her phone, the one she claimed had broken months ago, slid out. Curiosity got the better of me. I powered it on. It lit up instantly, and there it was. Messages. Not vague hints, not innocent exchanges. Clear, undeniable proof. Words written to another man. Words about nights together, about feelings she had buried at home. A photo too, her smile brighter than it had been in years, but not for me. I stared at the screen for less than a minute. That was all I needed. And then I turned it off, slid it back into her purse, and put everything neatly back on the shelf. No confrontation. No drama. She thought she held the secret like a weapon, but the truth was, I had already stepped out of her shadow. Proof didn't wound me, it freed me. The next morning, she floated into the kitchen with that practiced air of indifference. She asked if I had plans for the weekend, her voice light, like we were still partners planning a life together. I told her nothing had changed. My tone was steady, my eyes unreadable. She blinked, unsettled by the calm. She was waiting for me to stumble, to crack, to let something slip that revealed I knew. But I gave her nothing. That was the difference between us. She lived off reactions. I had stopped giving her any. And in that silence, her own lies started eating her alive. I began to move differently. I got up earlier, left the house before she did. I stayed later at work, spent more time at the gym, even started reconnecting with people I hadn't spoken to in years. She noticed. She asked if I was avoiding her, if I was angry. I shrugged, said I was busy. And the simplicity of that answer rattled her more than an argument ever could. She had expected war. What she got was exile. Every time she tried to test me, mentioning coworkers, disappearing late at night, leaving her phone face down, I met it with silence. No accusations. No questions. Just the cold reality that I no longer cared. And the cruelest part? She knew I had seen something. She could feel it. But because I never said a word, she had no idea how much I knew. That uncertainty became the crack in her armor. And it was spreading fast. It happened at a friend's barbecue. A casual Saturday afternoon. Nothing dramatic. Just food on the grill, kids running in the yard, conversations spilling over one another. She was there, of course. She had been invited before everything cracked, and no one had uninvited her. I arrived later than usual. Not because I planned it, but because I no longer rushed to be anywhere I didn't want to be. When I walked into the backyard, I saw her standing with a group, laughing too loudly, clutching her wine glass like it was a lifeline. Her eyes darted to me instantly, scanning for a reaction. I gave her none. I greeted a few people, shook hands, and moved on. Calm, steady, as if she were just another guest. That unsettled her. The evening wore on, and she tried to position herself near me more than once. She interrupted conversations I was having, tossed in little comments about how I'd been acting distant, how I wasn't myself lately. Her words hung heavy, meant for the group, meant to spark curiosity, maybe sympathy. But every time, I kept my tone even. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct her. I simply redirected the conversation back to work, to hobbies, to anything but her. And people noticed. They saw the cracks in her performance, the way her smile twitched when I refused to feed the narrative. At one point, she snapped. A friend had complimented me, said I looked good, like I'd been taking care of myself. Before I could answer, she cut in sharply, saying I was just trying to prove something, that I was playing a role. The group fell silent. Eyes shifted to me, waiting for a reaction. I gave them the same thing I had given her since that night. Silence. I set my drink down, smiled lightly, and walked away. Her voice rose behind me, sharper, desperate, trying to claw back control. But the more she spoke, the worse it sounded. What was meant to expose me ended up exposing her. Her mask slipped in front of the very people she counted on to believe her. By the time I left, the whispers had already started. Not about me, but about her. They were beginning to see the truth she had tried so hard to bury. And that was the power of silence. Not rage. Not defense. Just absence. It left her unraveling in public while I walked away without a single mark. After that night at the barbecue, something shifted in her. The performance she'd kept up for months was cracked open in front of others, and now the panic set in. She started reaching out constantly. Calls during work hours, texts late at night, messages that ranged from sharp to sentimental. One morning she wrote that she hated me for being so cold. That same evening, she sent another saying she missed me, that we could fix things if I would only talk. I didn't reply. Not once. Silence wasn't a tactic anymore. It had become my state of being. She tried showing up at places she knew I'd be. Once at the gym, lingering near the entrance like it was a coincidence. Another time at a coffee shop close to my office, sitting by the window, pretending to read. Each time, I acknowledged her presence with nothing more than a glance. No confrontation, no conversation. Just the acknowledgement of someone I used to know, nothing more. Meanwhile, my life was expanding. I joined a hiking group on weekends, spent more time with old friends who hadn't seen me in years. I started working on projects I had shelved long ago, filling my evenings with things that mattered to me, not with waiting for her approval. The space she left behind was no longer empty. It was occupied by growth. She must have sensed it, because her messages grew more desperate. She accused me of replacing her. She asked if there was another woman. She demanded to know if I had ever loved her at all. I read them, then locked my phone and went back to whatever I was doing. That silence hit harder than any cruel response could have. One evening, she finally cornered me in person. She waited outside my building, her voice trembling as she asked why I was treating her like a stranger. I told her nothing had changed. I was simply living without the weight of lies. Her eyes filled with something between rage and fear, but I walked past her without stopping. Because the truth was undeniable now. She wasn't chasing love. She was chasing relevance. She wanted proof she still mattered. But every step I took away from her, every word I didn't say, was proof of the opposite. And that realization was breaking her faster than any betrayal ever broke me. Her next move wasn't emotional. It was practical. She thought the remnants of our shared life would tether me back to her. The credit card, the bills, the paperwork, the routines we had built together. She assumed those ties were unbreakable, that I would keep carrying her even after she confessed to feeling more with someone else. It started with a message about the bank account. She claimed her card wasn't working, asked if I could check. I didn't respond. Hours later, she tried again, sharper this time, accusing me of forgetting. By the end of the week, she called. Her voice was edged with panic. I told her calmly that I had already separated everything. She was on her own. Silence followed, then a quick, bitter goodbye. Not long after, I received an email about utilities. She said she needed access, that she couldn't pay her portion without my help. I made a single call, shifted all the accounts into my name, and closed the door she thought she could still use. When she realized, she showed up at my door, papers in hand, her tone sharp, saying I couldn't just erase her from what we built. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I told her she had erased herself the night she admitted she got what she needed elsewhere. I had simply followed through. Her lips tightened, eyes burning with the frustration of someone who had lost control of the script. She turned and stormed off, but it wasn't anger that weighed on her shoulders. It was fear. Meanwhile, I felt lighter than I had in years. I changed the locks, rearranged the house, stripped away every reminder of her presence. Each decision wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. This was no longer our life. It was mine. Friends noticed the shift. They said I seemed sharper, more focused, even younger. One of them joked that I had dropped 10 years in a month. And maybe I had. Not in age, but in the weight I no longer carried. She, on the other hand, was unraveling. Word reached me that she had borrowed money from her sister, that she had started telling friends I had abandoned her. But her story didn't hold. People had seen the cracks for themselves. What she never expected was that the man she thought would collapse without her had learned to stand taller in her absence. And every broken time made that truth more permanent. It was almost predictable. When the money and the story stopped working, she reached for the last weapon she thought she had, her body. She showed up late one evening, uninvited, dressed like she was stepping out for a night that had nothing to do with me. Her perfume filled the doorway before her words did. She asked if she could come in, her voice soft, careful, as if she was already rehearsing the seduction. I stepped aside, not because I wanted her there, but because I wanted her to see what her reflection looked like against my silence. She walked into the living room and sat on the couch, legs crossed slowly, leaning back with the same posture she had used when we first met. Only this time, there was nothing magnetic about it. It looked desperate. She tried small talk at first, mentioning old memories, the vacations, the nights we couldn't stop laughing. Her tone was smooth, rehearsed. But when I didn't respond, she shifted. She leaned closer, touched my arm, let her hand linger just a little too long. Her eyes searched mine for the spark of the man who once would have melted instantly. I gave her nothing. My gaze stayed calm, steady, unmoved. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a drink. When I returned, she was still sitting there, smiling nervously, her confidence cracking under the weight of my silence. Finally, she said she missed me, that she still loved me. The words didn't shake me. They sounded hollow, like lines delivered without conviction. I set my glass down, looked at her once, and then at the door. The message was clear without me speaking a word. Her face changed. For the first time, she looked afraid, not of me, but of the emptiness between us. She realized what she had lost wasn't just a husband. It was the ability to move me at all. She stood, adjusted her dress, tried to mask the collapse behind a forced smile. She walked to the door slowly, glancing back one last time as if expecting me to stop her. I didn't. The door closed softly, and the house exhaled. She had played her final card, and it landed flat. And that was when I knew the balance had shifted completely. She wasn't the one deciding anymore. I was. When she realized she couldn't get through to me directly, she turned outward. If she couldn't control me, she would try to control the story. That was her last weapon, words whispered into the ears of others. Friends began to mention things in passing. She had told them I'd grown cold, that I had abandoned her without reason. She painted herself as the victim, fragile and confused, left behind by a man who no longer cared. I let her talk. I never corrected them, never tried to defend myself. I simply carried on with the same calm that had become my shield. But words without truth crumble fast. At a dinner one night, I walked into a room where she had already set the stage. She sat at the table, her tone low and heavy, telling a couple of friends how lost she felt, how I had changed into someone she couldn't recognize. Their eyes shifted toward me as I sat down, waiting for my reaction. I gave them nothing. I smiled politely, asked about work, about their kids, about anything but her. My silence left her words floating in the air with no weight to anchor them. And people noticed. They saw the difference between her trembling performance and my steady composure. Later that evening, one of those friends pulled me aside. He said something about her story didn't make sense. He had known me for years, had never seen me look more focused, more alive. He told me she seemed restless, almost rehearsed, while I looked like a man who had found peace. I didn't confirm anything. I only smiled. That was enough. The more she spoke, the more isolated she became. Her accusations turned into background noise, her tears into a routine no one fully believed anymore. She thought she was planting doubt in others. What she was really planting was suspicion in herself. Every word she threw out came back sharper, cutting her image down piece by piece. And the irony was brutal. She had confessed to me once that she felt something with someone else. She expected me to crumble. Instead, I built silence around her. And now, the same silence was exposing her to everyone else. By the time the night ended, I didn't need to say a word. Her story had already undone itself. And for the first time, I could see it in her eyes. She knew she wasn't just losing me. She was losing her grip on everyone. It was almost poetic that the end came on a quiet Sunday evening. The kind of evening where the air is still, where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I was on the porch, a glass of bourbon in my hand, when I heard the knock at the door. I already knew who it was. She stood there, no makeup, no mask, her eyes swollen from nights she hadn't slept. She asked if she could come in, just for a few minutes. Her voice trembled, stripped of the confidence she once wore like armor. I let her speak, standing in the doorway, not moving aside. She said she was sorry. She said people make mistakes. She said she finally understood what she had lost. Her words came out in fragments, breaking under the weight of her own desperation. She waited for me to cut in, to show anger, or maybe even mercy. But I didn't. I let her drown in the silence she had once forced on me. When her voice cracked, she asked if I hated her. I shook my head slowly. Hate takes energy. She no longer had that power over me. That answer broke something in her. She had come hoping for fire, for proof she still mattered. Instead, she found emptiness. I handed her an envelope. Inside were the papers I had prepared weeks ago. Divorce, clean and final. She held them like they were heavier than she expected, her hands trembling as she flipped through the pages. She whispered that I had planned this all along. She was right. She tried one last plea. She said we could rebuild, that love could be found again if we worked for it. I stepped back, opened the door wider, not to invite her in, but to show her the way out. No shouting, no accusations, no dramatic finale. Just silence. She left slowly, her shoulders sagging under the truth. She glanced back once, waiting for me to call her name. I didn't. The door closed, and with it, the last chapter of her in my life. I sat back on the porch, the night wrapping around me, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing but calm. No weight, no noise, just freedom. She once told me she finally felt something with someone else. Tonight, she finally felt nothing with me, and that silence will follow her longer than I ever will. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe, it only gets stronger from here.